Good day to you, partner. I'm keen, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Hey guys, Wheat Solo here, aka the Skeleton King. So first let's go over the little intro. As you can see, he summons the first 5 Fire Golems, then swaps his gear to summon the 6. Another thing to note, there is no snapshot in this build. He simply swaps from one set of items to summon 5, and then another set for his 6, and to clear the map with. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the map mods. I think they're pretty bad. Now, minus block is actually a good thing to roll on a map these days for any Necromancer. Why? Okay, not any Necromancer. If you run max block, it is not good to have minus block on your map mods. That would just be clear. It's that we don't want to block. So it's a either kind of helps you out because you have a small amount of block anyways, just from gear or stats, or it's just basically a dead mod, even if it doesn't help you at all because you're at the lowest amount of block you can be at. What about minus defense? Minus defense is actually a very, very big deal. One of the reasons why we don't run max block anymore, besides just kind of understanding about frame data, the amount of stats you can have on a Necromancer and how it's hard to run all the stats you need, unless you're doing a mad swap. Like, trust me, you want to run max block for PA, there's ways you can do it, especially with some crazy swappage. But besides that, it's kind of hard to get your FBR, FHR, FCR to levels that are acceptable. Well, it's kind of because defense kind of replaces that. Also bone armor, and just having more points for vitality and energy, and the bone armor change as well. But we were already starting to focus on vitality and defense before bone armor was changed. As you may notice, he doesn't actually have bone armor, but he's casting it sometimes. That is because of a D-clone belt, which is a very, very good item for this build. But, again, he's no snapshotting, right? But the facet kind of makes up for the fact he loses +1 skills. So, what about the other map mod on this map besides minus defense, which we kind of understand is a really, really big deal? Well, it's 71% IAS. Now, I would really like to do more videos about fanaticism and revives. By the way, he's not going to be doing the map events. He'll do them on the clear through and show you how much of the map he cleared, which will probably never be enough for some people. By the way, he's picking up items, and he'll even slam some at the end of the video, which some people will say is part of the map time. Excuse me. I got something in my throat. Okay. I want to make more videos about fanaticism and revives. Well, just revives in general, and make more videos about them. But if you watched it, you'll know that a level 15 Faith possibly reduces the frames per attack of a revive by 2. It probably reduces their frames by attack by some amount. Well, what about 71% IAS? Well, that would be impossible to get from fanaticism. 15 level fanaticism is about 30 IAS, by the way. I think it might decrease the frames per attack of all of these enemy minions by like 4. So you already have less defense, and these enemies are attacking faster. It's actually a really shitty map, okay? I think the fact that he has the belt with the bone armor proc and very high defense is the only reason he can do it. But, like, this is not a good map by any means. It's also fairly high density, okay? Besides that, I think he's doing it very well, and he basically has almost no chance of dying at any point in the map. What about the build right now? Well, let's just say one thing real quickly. He looks very strange. He is in a steel carapace, which I told you all to keep it on your radar. Like, there are a couple of dangerous packs he stomps into with shitty map mods, and I think the reason he can do it is basically because of the steel carapace giving him like 2,500 defense, which is absolutely insane. By the way, the map boss dies pretty quickly. Does do some damage to Emilio, but it seems like everybody else is doing pretty okay. He has lower resist now. Now, he comes to me, okay, like, because I'm the Skeleton King, right? So I know everything about Necromancer. And he's complaining about Fire Golems and him hitting a wall. Which is funny because I think everyone knows this is basically a joke build, doing the max Golem build. Like, even though, yes, this is working, it's, like, obviously not optimal. And he says, I've hit a wall, I can't get any better, T1 and T2 are easy enough, T3s are basically pointless, I can't get enough Pierce, he needs to add Pierce back to the Fire Golems, and I could, like, lose a bunch of damage and still do T1s and T2s fine. And I'm like, well, right, but for one, we have Lore Resist. And he's like, oh, Lore Resist sucks, no, I'm not going to cast it. Now, I'm not going to say that Lore Resist doesn't suck now, but it's still a really good spell. Like, we have access to Pierce, and that is something that a lot of classes wish they had. Well, they kind of get it from items, or they're mercenary, but we can just skill into it, okay? So he's going to be using Infinity on Emilio, so he's not going to be running Spit and Pus Act 1, which is always an option, but then you kind of run into the issue about where you're going to get your Infinity from, and that creates its own problems. Well, Lore Resist, if you skill into it and put hard points into it, you're going to get to like a minus 40 to 50 Lore Resist very, very quickly. How much damage will you be losing from your Fire Golems? It's actually kind of crazy. He was doing well over 100,000 damage, and he lost about 25,000 damage, cutting out 20 hard points, or 19 hard points into a synergy. Now, you may think that's like untenable. Well, think about it this way. Let's say if he's just doing like 100,000 damage and loses 20,000. So he's now at 80,000, right? Well, what if he gains, 40 Pierce? Well, a very simple way to do this would be to say, well, that 80,000, okay, divide it by 10, 8,000, times that by 4, 32,000. He's now doing 12,000 more than he was originally. Or he actually has a 12% DPS buff. Obviously, immunities get much more complicated than that, because if an enemy has, let's say, 40 fire res, and you remove 40 of it, you're doing much, much more than 40% extra damage. It's basically always just better. It gets even more complicated than that, and I'm going to go into that a little bit because it actually does apply to Fire Golems. Immunities, when you break an immunity, your Infinity and your Lore Resist will do half effectiveness, right? Or your Conviction Aura. They will both be at half. If you had Fire Pierce on your gear, or if you had Pierce on your gear, or from a mastery that worked, those do not get reduced by half. So for instance, if you're playing a Cold Sork in Diablo 2 Resurrected, or crap mode, and you sunder an enemy's cold resistance, you know that like free 70 cold pierce you get from Cold Mastery? Basically every single enemy you face in the game is going to have 0 res from that point on. Because even if it wasn't for the fact that sundering you don't face half immunity, I don't even know if that works. So I'm sorry if it doesn't work like that. But basically, even in Diablo 2 or Project Diablo 2, if you break an enemy's immunity with Lore Resist or Infinity Conviction, which you can't do with Pierce from your gear or Mastery, once you break it, the Pierce from your gear and Mastery kick in at full effectiveness. So that's why Pierce on gear is actually a really big deal, and I think would actually make Fire Golem builds more interesting and unique than they are now. The reason they were nerfed was partly due to their ability to literally destroy Declone, and Pierce had a small thing to do with that, I think especially on the ad section. But removing Pierce and changing them the way he did, I think they're still too good at Declone. So I really think we should make a Fire Golem Declone kill soon, so we can show you just how good it was, and then maybe try to figure out some way where we could redesign Fire Golems to add Pierce in, which kind of just increases the build diversity and the uniqueness of a pretty cool skill these days. So by the way, he showed the clarity of the map. Clarity, does that work? I think it was pretty good. I'm sure someone's unhappy. Again, when you're at the highest level of play, it's about density over time. So full clearing a map does nothing for you. What does something for you is killing a large portion of the map as quickly as possible. So here's his gear, and his Dominion's actually pretty bad, but again, he's just using it for the 6 Fire Golem, although it should have plus Lore Resist on it. The Phoenix does absolutely nothing for his Fire Golems. Remember, Pierce doesn't work, but it's giving him that Redemption Aura, And remember, there's no swap here. The belt is actually quite good because of the bone armor. He's still running a high amount of MF, and his boots are ridiculous. One of the things I find very interesting about this, and I don't quite understand, is the Veil of Steel. Now, the Steel Carapace is sure requiring quite a bit of strength, correct, even with its ethereal, but I still don't quite understand that. That's quite a disgusting one. I believe that was a +6 2-socket Fire Golem one, which is absolutely nasty, even if you can get a +7. His shield's pretty good too. The Veil of Steel Spire, I don't quite get it because it's only +2 skills. I know he doesn't quite need SCR with the way he's playing, even though he is casting LR now and could probably use a bit. He should probably swap a little bit. Again, Flickering Flame. The Merc gear is standard. But I'm going to have to ask him more about the Veil of Steel. Another video will be coming soon. Skelly King out, guys. GG.
Come play with us, Danny.